Hi, I'm Alistair Shipley. Driven by the beliefs that everyone has something special to offer, I created Not So Average, the podcast that proves that you don't need to be in the top 1% to be truly extraordinary. Each episode spotlights everyday people from your community, the very individuals you might pass on the street. These relatable stories reveal that whether you're a jack of all trades or a niche specialist, we all have unique experiences and valuable lessons to share. Imagine if we all took a moment to realize we're all not so average. Let's get after it. Welcome to another episode of Not So Average. This is your host, Alistair Shipley. If you're watching this, you know what to do. Like, share, help us get our message out there. Today's guest is a force in Canada's culinary scene and someone I've known since our early days at Moxie's. Mike Pigot, aka Chef Pigot, has carved out a serious legacy. From late nights on the line to building nationally recognized brands like Pigot's Burger Club, launching Pat and Betty's in tribute to family, and competing and winning on Food Network. His journey is proof that hustle, heart, and vision go a long way. But beyond the spotlight is a story reaching capacity, reinvention, and the kind of grit it takes to keep creating in an unforgiving industry. Mike's path is anything but average, and it's only getting started. This episode is going to be real, reflective, and packed with flavor. So let's get after it. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me. It's wicked.
What's your first memory of falling in love with food, and who were you cooking with?
Honestly, that's a great question. I think like as a chef, it's almost like an evolution. Some people fall right into it and they see that as their path. I went a roundabout way of doing it. I was always really passionate about like trying different things as a kid. My mom's whole side of the family was all in the grocery business. My grandfather worked in the grocery business, my uncle, my cousins, my mom, all that through my childhood. So it was always like something interesting came to market or they'd bring something new into the store, it'd be like brought home and tried. And it was always kind of an experiment. So there's always something different, whether it was different types of nationalities and their cuisines that we try out growing up and going and dining at different places. My family was like the active, like always Friday night we went for dinner kind of thing.
That's amazing.
My whole childhood. So it was always that sort of piece that I had around. So always fell in love with restaurants, always loved to go out and eat, and that kind of piece just slowly evolved from like an early age. And I finally got into the restaurant kind of scene when I was about 16, and that's the evolution of it.
Oh, geez. So you had a developed palate pretty early on, it sounds like.
Ate lots of things. I wouldn't say a developed palate by any means, but there's definitely like flavors that I liked and profiles that I liked and was like passionate about food and trying stuff. Once I started actually cooking, I was like, oh, this is the tools of putting it all together and going on a different path with it.
That's wild. Were there any particular like regions of the world that your family gravitated towards, like European cuisine, Asian cuisine?
Kind of everything, to be honest. Like my grandparents, both all European, French backgrounds, Ireland, Scottish, UK. So kind of all the classic ones you'd expect. And then with that piece, it was like a lot of just like home cooked things or Acadian background from my mom's mom, and have like stuff like meat pies and tortilla and like those sort of things. It was always like that was always there. And then a lot of sweets, like always like pastries and things being made around the house.
Damn.
But as far as dining out, I grew up in the Lower Mainland, big Southeast Asian community. So I ate a lot of different foods because of that. And really like a lot of friends and social things where we're able to experiment and see different things from a very young age and try different stuff and see what I really like and gravitate for. Like one of my best friends growing up was Moroccan, and his mom was from Marrakesh, and so his mom would be there, his grandmother would come visit, the aunts would always be there and cook. So that was always like a fun experience and try things that I'd never had before in a style of food that I'd never cooked before either. So that was all through high school. We spent a lot of time there. Lots of different layers to it.
That's awesome. Is food a form of storytelling, and what do you think your cooking has been trying to say over the years?
That's a great one. I think for cooking in general, it's you put your heart into it. People can tell when people are passionate about it and put that effort in and make sure things taste amazing, and there's a comfort gravitated for it. Like it's one of the only careers that you like have to actually have every day. So it's like if you're serving guests and serving friends that are coming to the restaurant, that's a necessity of life. So I think at that point, you're always in that mindset of delivering something that's really experiential and close to heart. So for me, kind of as my palate has evolved and cooking has evolved, I got a great piece of advice probably about 10 years ago in my career, 8 years ago in my career. And it was like the moment you realize you're cooking for the guest and not yourself, you'll be so much happier. And so it's like, you're being creative and you're putting things out there on a plate that you want to do, but you know that people that dine at your establishment or in different kind of factors that you're working within are coming there to enjoy that. And so it's like not trying to like pull things off the menu right away if it's like a hit and we're selling a ton of it, and not trying to really reinvent the wheel with those pieces either. It's like, hey, if there's something that's out there that people are coming back and they're loving, it's like play those hits, like give people what they want, and that just at the end of the day makes it more spirited and a lot happier as a career as you go forward. It's a lot of hours on your feet, so being able to be like, hey, I'm putting this out there, and people are coming back and there's a love of it. I think that's the evolution of like where you get to in your career and being in that mindset.
That's sweet. Talking about playing those hits, I hope you never get rid of that pork belly and scallops.
It's not going anywhere. There'd be a riot.
There would be a riot. I think every single person that I've introduced to your restaurant, that is the mandatory dish that we have to eat. You were mentioning before you got some advice about 10 years ago. Have you actively sought out mentorship at all with this culinary background, or where did you get your inspiration? Was there people that helped you along the way?
Yeah, I think my experience in culinary is pretty interesting, because a lot of guys will go the traditional route of going to school or working at a bunch of establishments where like the chef's really like mentoring them and growing them. Yeah. And I've always been that person that like dives feet first. Let's just go for it and see what happens. Yeah. So for me, like I advanced into like a leadership role really quick in my career. By the time I was 18, I was like a sous chef. 19, I was a sous chef. So like graduating high school, going right into that, when that wasn't even like career path, it was just something that naturally happened and evolved that way. Wow. When I did my post-secondary and why I came to Calgary, I came here to go to art school and do a fine arts degree, and that was the plan. And I cooked the whole time. And when I came to the city from growing up in like the Lower Mainland, definitely a smaller town, that sort of thing, I'd go into Vancouver, but like didn't have the same kind of zest and pizzazz that Calgary had when I got here, of being like action-packed downtown, really busy. The economy was incredible, and so people were out and about all the time. And my first gig in Calgary, I transferred with actually Milestones. I worked for them in BC, and then I came out to Calgary and worked at their downtown location here. And at that time, Stephen Ave was bustling. Like during like everything with oil and gas community, that lunches were insane, dinners were insane. And so seeing that, and then seeing restaurants around the neighborhood and around Stephen Ave at the time that were just bustling and doing really creative, fun food, then I was like, all right, this is like the process of like, there's more to this. I didn't dip my toe in by any means, but I was like, all right, this is like a piece that we can actually like grow from. So I noticed like this can be a career, this can be a really busy and successful career. Yeah. And I evolved all those pieces of like my education background into that, of this being like, anything can be a mentorship, and like I always gravitate towards teaching people or coaching or that sort of piece with like that. And so it's a pretty natural evolution to grow into that chef thing, pull in the creative background and have that as well from like the art side of it, and gave myself, I think, a little bit of a leg up with how I like present stuff and how I create food and how I think things should look, and just having that eye for like the detail piece of the industry, I think was a huge asset.
Wild. Well, you answered what my next question was going to be, because when I did my research, came across that you went to school for art. And obviously, if anybody sees your social media page or even your website, your dishes are very artistic and well plated and just absolutely wonderful to look at. So what made you decide that you weren't going to necessarily move forward with the art piece and culinary was going to be the play? Like, was there a particular milestone that hit that you're like, this is it?
Definitely. No, I think that's a great question, and thanks for saying that as well. I think for me with the culinary side, I was in my third year of school, and I sat down with my profs at the Alberta College of Art here, or the Alberta University of the Arts here, and me and her were talking, and one of her best friends was a chef in Toronto. And so we were talking, and she's like, art's the career you always have to work for, and there's not really the difference in the culinary side of it. So she's like, if you're working on your art practice and you're doing that as well, there isn't really a wrong way to go with it. And for me, I was like, all right, most people that take that art path end up being teachers or professors or doing that, instructors at a different level. And I'm like, well, it's the same, like where I'm at in my life and in my career. And so I was like, why not try it? I got a great opportunity, how we met and that piece. So I went to like head office for Moxie's and did a lot of their training stuff, did some development with their chefs. And that was really where I was like, all right, this is like the move forward to like really have a strong career doing this.
That's wild. So when we met, you were still in art school.
Yeah. Oh. I'd like just finished up basically.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's crazy. I had just finished up at SAIT, so right across the way, for hospitality management.
Crazy.
But it's funny how things take you in different directions.
Absolutely.
So you and I have obviously had a lot of conversations outside of the mic and stuff. And one of the things that you and I had discussed in the past was like burnout and reinvention. So I do have some questions around that, because I think in today's hustle culture, that is very common to come across, especially with people that are high achieving or they have goals. Yeah. And so like you've been open about experiencing burnout in the culinary world. What do you think pushed you to that point? Like starting there?
Honestly, I think I can pretty much like pinpoint every single growth in my career at a burnout phase, which is pretty fascinating. Like I look back at it, and it was actually something I was talking about this last week with a couple friends, but it's like, I think burnout is natural in a lot of senses. I don't think it's healthy, but I think it is a force of contention as you move forward in any career that you're doing, especially when you have a passion for what you're doing. So for me, I think every time I've had that and experienced that in the culinary world, it's been when I've been in a shift. So the burnout necessarily wouldn't be a negative from a growth standpoint, but a negative in the moment. So either like health related pieces that like happened, or just like physically can't do it, or like mentally anything like that. And then at that point, it's like a reevaluation. You get this almost opportunity to reinvent yourself, which I find is the growth piece and like the exciting part of it. And then as you have the accolades and resumes and all that sort of stuff throughout the career, then it becomes more of a mindfulness piece of like not letting it happen or finding a way out of it as quick as possible. But for me, I've always just recognized that I know it's natural. I know it's going to be there. And so for me, when I've had it happen, it's always been at a point that I wasn't really happy in my career either, or like wasn't happy in what I was doing at that moment. And so it was a welcomed gift to have that happen and be like, all right, pump the brakes, reset, think about it, and then reinvent. So I had it happen like right around COVID time. Then I did a bunch of stuff. I had it 10 years earlier in my career, did a bunch of stuff. And I only really had one shift in my career ever that was not burnout related. That was like a big piece and a big change. So I think for me, like it was definitely that thing of like, I enjoy what I do. So you go all in and you're like, this is what I want to accomplish. This is the goal I have, to the detriment of your body or detriment of your mind and those sort of things. But as long as you like work on that, then it's not a negative. But if you constantly just go spin your tires and go in that wheel in that direction, then burnout's horrible. It's you're doing it at a detriment to yourself. But it's like, hey, how did I get into that situation, and how am I never going back there again? And that's really the biggest goal I find with it.
That's impressive that, well, it sounds like early on you changed your lens on what burnout means, and you actually, I guess, intentionally looked at, why am I experiencing burnout? And then you came to a conclusion that you weren't feeling fulfilled in a certain area. And then you assessed a path forward, or pumped the brakes, like you said.
Yeah.
And then probably did some work or took a break or something. I really appreciate that stuff. Yeah, burnout is always going to be there, at least from the people that I've been talking to. It's definitely what you do with it. And there is such an opportunity to learn and grow. And yeah, I really appreciate that view. So what did burnout teach you about, say, even ambition, boundaries, or even relationships? It could be even the relationships with food.
I think the burnout piece for me, it really was if you're going to go all in on something and you want to accomplish a goal, who are you bringing with you? And that's the biggest piece. It's like you can have the craziest BHAG goals, get there, this is what I need to do. And if you don't have anyone supporting you or helping you along the way, you're going to burn out every time. Like it's not sustainable. So when I get in those situations now, it's like, who am I leveling up around me so that I don't have to get back to that situation? So whether it's like a work related piece where it's like, oh, like maybe the team wasn't as knowledgeable, maybe I didn't share as much that I should have as far as like my expectations or what I'm really trying to accomplish here. Maybe it's a cultural thing within like the organization or what we're having, that like the culture fit isn't great with like another leader in the business or team members that just don't get along, that sort of thing. And then it's like you're constantly repairing something or having that conversation. And so for me, the biggest one that I take away now is like those just really healthy conversations, coaching the team, giving them proper development, making sure that I'm checking in regularly and seeing that output, so that I don't get back into that situation. So I think that's the biggest tool. And I didn't really fight that in my career, but a lot of my career was like, oh, you have to like, it was less about people at the beginning, I think.
Interesting.
It was like, hey, like your brigade, your teamwork, it's like everyone's in the same thing. You're working with a bunch of pirates, have a great time, go out after work.
That's
this.
Bourdain.
Yeah. And it's like, that's the piece. And like, that was what the early career was. And then it's like, there's been a really crazy evolution in the last decade plus now of just like, that's not what this industry is or what it has to be. And so that like mentorship piece and like coaching people around you, and you asked earlier about mentors and like this kind of self-led along the way kind of piece for myself. I wanted to be able to give back to people that work for me, of being like, hey, I'm invested in you. I want to see you succeed. Yeah. And in turn, you're going to learn some new tools, but also I'm going to be able to pump my own brakes and be like, I don't need to be there for this. I'm going to let people make a mistake. I'm going to let people fail. Yeah. And then I'm going to bring them back up and coach them so that they don't get into that state either. And so that's really my big one.
That's amazing. What's that saying go, or how does that saying go? It's, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others.
Yeah.
I probably butchered it, but
close enough.
Yeah. That's going to be my bumper sticker. Yeah. But I like that approach of bringing people with you, and you recognize where people, at least on your team, are at. You let them fail, then you give them the teachings, and then it, in turn, by them learning these skills, you're able to take more of a step back from, I'm assuming, that part of the business, because you can trust in them to handle it.
100%.
That's amazing. And when did you really learn that as a leadership style? That was the approach that you wanted to take with your people or your team?
Really, for me, I think the piece on that and the approach was there's no other way than to do that. And it was really when I opened my own businesses and COVID happened and I started to like develop things and like work with myself. I was by myself a lot. And so I was like, that was the piece. And I was like, this is a grind, but it's like, I have a goal and like, that's what I want to do. So I was like consulting a ton, doing private chef stuff, cooking at people's houses, making content, all these sort of things. And it was just like nonstop. Yeah. But I was doing it alone. And I was like, one, I'm like, why am I doing this? Yeah. Like I have a goal, but it's like, this isn't sustainable as like as an output. So when I started bringing in team members, it was like the only way to naturally get through it was you hit some speed bumps. And I was like, hey, this like wasn't necessarily as coaching as much as I want. And then I was like, hey, this is a rebuild time. Let's do it. And that was probably 2 years ago now. It was just like the only way to get through this is to talk to everyone and be very crystal clear of like, this is the vision. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, leaders, all that sort of stuff get to this thing of like, they have a goal that they want to accomplish, but like, is the team crystal clear that's the same goal? Okay. And so for me, it was like getting really honest with that of like, this is the projections, this is the stuff, like give everyone the tools around you to see what the goals are, from like costing to like presentation to like how things look, aesthetics, how we talk with one another. Yeah. And so giving all that out and then constantly talking about it. And so it was like, it's just that thing of a constant process of every day. It's like we check in, we know what the goals are every week. A leadership team sits down together every month. All of our like team members sit down with one of the members of the leadership team. And it's that constant kind of evolution of like the conversations are happening. And it's like, well, this is the goal. So it's like, are you in? And you can really kind of gut check everyone throughout the time. And it's like, hey, if someone doesn't want to be there, or they're not feeling that they're growing the way they want to grow, or they just don't want or appreciate what the goal is, might not be the right fit. And so like that's kind of the evolution that I found was the biggest piece for us to succeed.
Wow. I could see that really benefiting to the culture at Pat and Betty's. I'm assuming that's one of the places that you've implemented this, and your other organizations. So that's amazing. Looking back, would you say burnout was a breaking point or a turning point?
Turning point, I thought 100%. Yeah, every time it was a turning point.
Perfect.
I don't think, career-wise, the burnout's ever been like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to be in this situation. It's more evaluating what's happening at the time and like, how do you, it's fix it or fire it. That's really
fix it or fire it.
That's the mentality to move forward.
I like that. So Pat and Betty's is named after two powerful matriarchs. What made you want to anchor your restaurant in family legacy?
For me, it was like opening a restaurant always was like you're inviting someone into like your home, your living room, and you're hosting someone. Like that's really the way I look at a restaurant. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of restaurants that are powerful brands and fun to go into and enjoyable. But I always found that intimate thing of it was like you went to a restaurant in like different cities where it was like that was the driving factor of like, this is the vision behind it. This is why we're doing it. And me, it's like it gives another meaning and purpose to what you do every day. So you're like, hey, you're going in there and you're like, hey, I've named this after my mother and my business partner's mother. You're like, naturally, you want to be able to emulate some of those things. And I don't think like work is a family by any means. Like that term's thrown around a lot with places, but I think having that anchor thing of like, that's a meaningful part of what we do every day. We're nurturing people, we're feeding them, and we should be doing the same for our team. We should be doing the same for around us. So it's like that embodiment of culture of like, what do you do? Like the upbringing piece of it, all those sort of things. Like my mom is very nurturing, huge support tool I've had my whole life and always been my like biggest supporter. So to be able to honor her in that way, but also then take that teaching and be like, this is how we're going to work as well. I think that's really the shift of the industry piece, and for myself of just being like, there's a fulfillment level for everyone and the team buys into that. They know that this is named after this way. There's a responsibility to on everyone's side of like honoring that. And so I think it makes it that anchoring point for how we're successful.
That's beautiful. I have nothing to say to that. That is beautiful. I do like your comment about family versus team view for people that work alongside you or for you in your case. There was somebody that I followed very closely to. Her name's Patty McCord, and she was the chief people and culture officer for Netflix. And she wrote this book about basically how people should be viewing their employment, essentially, and as long as, or from a hiring standard. And it was this view of everybody as a team member, and very much like a professional sports team, you serve a purpose, and you're made aware of what that purpose is. And when you achieve that or don't achieve that, it's you're looked at it now, obviously with the lens of you're still treated like a human and stuff like that. Like you get all the benefits and all that stuff, but you often find organizations that we're a family, but because they view these people as a family, it's hard to cut out the cancers in your organization because we're a family. Like we're going to take them through whatever it may be, every trial and tribulation.
Yeah, I think naturally in the hospitality world in general, it's a lot of misfits and different people that kind of fall into that career path. I think the interesting thing is the direction that it's taken over the last number of years of being like, this is a viable career. People are treated with respect. This is the piece. This is the like measurables that they have in their job that makes it more centric to be approachable in that way. Whereas before it's just like you're making great food and by any means necessary to get there is okay.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that when I was in my upbringing or like young on in my career where people were yelling, freaking out, that sort of thing.
Oh yeah, the traditional screaming at your line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so like that culture piece of just shifting how you view that and also how you can get more out of people by showing respect and showing the reasons why. So I look at like our team right now and not necessarily cutting out cancers by any means, but giving people measurables all the time. So whether you're the porter that's washing dishes in the back, whether you're the saute cook, whether you're the chef de partie, the sous chef, the chef running any of these services, the general manager, service, wait staff, everything like that, everyone has a goal. And like, first and foremost, it's like, what's the purpose of what we're doing this every single day? And then breaking it down to simple things of like, how long does a drink take? How long does this plate of food take to come out? What's the quality check on that food? Is it being temped with this way? Are we sous videing something? Are we doing this? Are we doing this? Are we doing this? And there's checks and balances to make sure all those are measured and looked after. And then it's coached onto the team member if it's not. So it's like there is those things like this is the stuff, this is the checklist, this is the playbook of how you should succeed. And when things aren't being followed, it's a coachable conversation. Still not being followed, a different conversation, and so on. And I feel like everyone in their career should be well aware of being let go.
Yeah.
And if they're not, and it's a blindsided thing, that's a failure on you as a leader. Like that like it should never happen that way. It should be like crystal clear that they know that something's wrong and they're either choosing not to fix it. There's outside variables. They just don't want to do it. And then there's a progress forward and everyone's on the same page. So I think having those conversations, being meaningful in it, having purpose and giving people measurables is the way to avoid that as a whole. And for me now too, if someone's not the right fit, it's like, we have 3 months to decide if someone's not the right fit in any job in Canada. Yeah. So it's like, give the expectation, show them how to do it. And 2 weeks before that 3 months process happens, have a conversation. You're doing great. Love having you here. Let's move the ball forward. What do you want out of this going forward? And the other way is, hey, we've given you all these measurables. We see you're still struggling. Maybe this and this could happen. We need to see that over the next couple of weeks. And then they're a great model employee and they're going to push the needle forward. Or it's like, hey, you're just not the right fit, and that's fine too. Yeah. But the conversations are there, they're being had, and that's the evolution of like coaching and making sure that people are on the same page.
Yeah. I'm sure your measurables and what you're holding your staff to, those KPIs and stuff, leads to a level of consistency too with what you're pushing out every single night, which is, I would say, arguably a big point of why people keep coming back to restaurants. They enjoy something, and every time they've been there, it's consistently the same, and that's why they like it.
100%.
I would be absolutely crushed, going back to your pork belly and scallop, if that was done differently because somebody just cut out an ingredient or it was held like the sear was too long or something like that. That's something that kind of leads to a great restaurant, at least that, in my opinion. I would say at least the restaurant that I enjoy the most of yours, which is the Pat and Betty's, like you've built a level of community through food. Has building community through food changed the way that you see your own roots?
I think a little bit. For me, like I've always had a really strong base with my parents, and having that like tangible like structure and like roots that I came from has always been super important to me, and always been something that I've nurtured. And as I've gotten older, I respect a lot more, and I want to spend that time, and I want to have that connection. So I think with like the restaurant piece, it's like the same thing as building those relationships with people that come through the door every day. It's like you have the opportunity to wow someone, you have the opportunity to welcome someone back. You can be going through heartbreak, you could be celebrating something, you could be celebrating an anniversary, a birthday, you can be coming there for a dinner after someone's passed away and that was something that was important to you. And there's so many different layers to like restaurants and how they can do that for people around them. But it's like having those key relationships and having our team buy into that and like want to harvest that with people that come through the doors, welcoming people back every time and having those meaningful conversations. I think that's the most exciting part about being in a restaurant. Like we're a very open kitchen. People have to walk through the kitchen to go up into our mezzanine level. So it's fun to have those people come up and be like, that was amazing. Like we enjoyed that so much, or like, great to see you again. Like we've been back twice this month, or having guest visits from out of town in a hotel and they're coming in 3 nights of the 5 nights they're staying in the city. Like amazing. Pretty cool to see that, and them to be like, them to be blown away or impressed with what we're doing and being like, this was a great experience, and like we haven't had an experience like this before. And I think that's the like upper echelon of what you want all the time, to be able to deliver that and people to have this amazing experience and to leave the city or go back to their friends and talk about it. And that word of mouth marketing has been a really big important piece for us. And so I think naturally when you do that and you're not flashing things all over the place and advertising all over the place, that word of mouth marketing is tenfold what you get back in return, because they're like, oh, I went there and our great staff members served me and we had the best time, and they talk about the person that served them, or hey, like the chef came out and dropped this plate off and talked about this and this. It's like that's the like wow factor for dining, I think. There's a connection point. Like you're not just sitting there, you're not getting a plate dropped down, here you go. It's like, this is why we're doing it this way, this is what we've done to prepare it, this is the wine that goes great with it, this is the cocktail we crafted that can pair with this as well. So it's having all those things encompassing and just warm, like wholehearted hospitality. Yeah.
I think you've done a very good job at that. It's amazing just how strong the attachment, or sorry, where I'm going with this is, I'm always blown away by how food just really does bring people together. And you nailed it on the head earlier when you said it's one of those reoccurring things in your life. You need to eat. And then it's really nice that you get to share this with great people, a great environment, and then you get some great food there too. You've built ghost kitchens, past clubs, and more. What drives you to keep experimenting?
Honestly, it's just the love of the game at this point. To go back to the sports reference, it's like once you're doing something and you're enjoying it, I think that naturally more things come and flow of what do you want to do? What do you want to do forever? Like I think being a chef and being an entrepreneur is combo actioned all of that into like one big like ambitious thing of being like, well, what else? Like what next? Like when things are going really well and you've established things and you're building great culture with your teams and you're seeing people excited about certain products you're putting out, whether it's a ghost kitchen, whether it's pasta club, whether it's a food hall, whether it's Pat and Betty in a full service dining, it's like, well, what's next? So I think that's always the one for me of like constantly thinking about it. But I find now I went in really hard. Like the first 5 years since COVID was the push. I'm like, let's do this. I wanted to do X amount of businesses. I wanted to figure this out. I wanted to put all my eggs into baskets and see what happens. I also was able to experience some failures at the same time. So I think that was a really good growing part for myself. Because before, when I had burnout, it was like, all right, here you go. Like, make a change. Whereas this is like, oh, I have skin in the game, this is what's happening. But it's like, I don't have to keep doing that if I don't want to. And pulling out of stuff that I don't want to do anymore, shifting what I'm doing, shifting responsibilities makes way for things that are meaningful and that you're excited about and you want to put the work into. And so now for me, it's like creating meaningful spaces and things that I want to be a part of and I want to sustain and I want to grow, but also not necessarily moving as quickly as I was at one point. It's now being smart and intentional and being like, this is really the purpose. And I saw that intention and what it got me with Pat and Betty and with our team and with the growth and with the transitions and changes that we've made over the few years we've been open. So it's like, that's the piece. It's like, be really intentional with the movement now and still delivering things that are fun. And it doesn't have to be full, it doesn't have to be full service. It doesn't have to be high end. It can be anything in between and all of the above at the same time.
So I want to go backwards a bit because you mentioned like you can walk away from things now, and the restaurant industry is notorious for just having a high close rate. I forgot what the stat is, but it's always changing. It never looks good. Like majority of restaurants close after X amount of years. So for you, when do you know when it's best to lean in on something and push a little harder versus when is it time to let something go?
I think a lot of it comes down to alignment, and it's
Yeah.
just, if you're doing it on your own, it's different. It's like, hey, I put it all in on myself. But when you have partners and you're working on a project together and bringing people to support, restaurants are expensive, they're challenging. Not having mentorship in that is challenging as well. I have some great partners in everything that I do right now, and that's been a big reason for success. But there's times that like maybe some partnerships don't align, or people that you've worked with in the past doesn't really align with you, and that's when things need to change. So it's like, it's okay to step away with something if it's like, hey, we're not on the same wavelength for how we manage people, how we manage the business, how we see this vision growing forward, and it's okay to walk away from. Or it's like, hey, I took on this project, I got it to a certain level, and I'm good to be done with it now and flat. Whereas before, I definitely was more long game. A lot of chefs when they're younger bounce around, cook at a ton of different places, do that. And I think it's great from a learning standpoint. And for me, I was always been pretty committed to be like, let's see it through. And now I'm like, I'm okay to not have to always see it through. Whereas before I'd be like, no, I'm going to go to the bitter end until I don't want to be there anymore. And then I'm going to see what happens, just because I was like, that was the thing. Like, I was like, I'm loyal to the business. I'm loyal to this. And my dad gave me a piece of advice when I was really young, and he said, like, protect the brand. Yeah. And I take that into a lot of stuff that I do and with my own businesses and stuff in the past. But I'm like, hey, if I'm working for someone and I'm doing this job that's meaningful, and there's like something that they've entrusted in me, that they've invested in, that they've done that, and so I take that to heart. And I always had that in my early career of being like, that's what I'm doing. So I always left on a high note, always made sure things were looked after, but maybe stayed a little longer than I needed to at certain points. So now I'm just like very intentional with how I spend my time.
Amazing. Going back to the thread of the restaurant industry just being hard to keep the doors open, what's really helped you survive and thrive in the industry?
Systems. Literally everything's measurable. It's like, hey, we know what's going through the bank. We know we're spending for food costs every week. We know what we're spending on statutory holidays. We know what we're spending for the linen coming in, the soap, this sort of stuff. And we track all of it on a weekly basis and make sure it's achievable, attainable, and responsible for all of us. So it's like, hey, we're going to fix stuff when it's broken because we know we can. We're going to bring in new things because we know we can. And it's a planning piece and being really physically responsible with how you do it. And a lot of people get in the restaurant industry thinking that they're like, oh, we're going to put out great food, it's going to be costed well, and we're going to be fine. But there's so many other variables of that. It's like turnover, how people are coached, the mentorship piece. It's like, hey, if you're training a new staff member every week because they don't want to be there, that's a big shift in it too. It's like, oh, I'm changing the menu every week. Fun and interesting, but is it sustainable from a cash flow and like physical responsible element to it? Whereas I think a lot of people go into things in the restaurant industry not necessarily with all the tools and more passion. And for me, I'm like, hey, you have to have both. And early on in my career, I did a lot of corporate restaurants, went that way, had a lot of tools, saw the systems and how they worked. And then when you put that into play, when you're being more creative and you're still holding it to that high of a standard, it makes it so much easier to grow and to be sustainable and to see that success point. And so for me, I'm like always like very keen on being that way with like how we operate, and also involving everyone in it. Like the team knows when we're doing great, they know when we're not doing great, and it's like, cool, what are you going to do to fix it when it's that point? And when it's great, it's like, hey, what did we do last week that helped us succeed, last period that helped us succeed, last year that helped us succeed, and how do we keep that momentum going with what we need going forward?
That transparency seems to be something that you offer up quite a bit for your staff members and stuff like that. I'm sure they're appreciative of it. Has it ever backfired for you where you're overly transparent and maybe they ran with it a different way?
Not really. I definitely didn't really have this when I was younger, but I encouraged the team to fail.
Okay.
Like fail with grace, own it, and let's move forward. It's like, hey, you learn from your mistakes, like wholeheartedly. Like when you go into something and you think it's the right call, but it's not, whether it's how you talk to someone, whether it's a dish you put out, all those sort of things, and you go in there and you fail and you take the learning from it, that's where like the magic happens. And like that's the progress forward, and you're seeing people develop themselves and seeing leadership grow, seeing young cooks be like less scared about cooking something and being like, this is how we do it, getting confident with how they're using their tools, flipping a saute pan to cooking a piece of fish to grilling a steak, all those pieces in between. But it's like all those things are like when you fuck it up, it's like it's okay. And it's like cool, we're just going to make another one. It sucks to have to do it. It costs us money, but it's at the same point too, you're going to learn a new way of doing this and a better way of doing this as you do it. And you're going to get more confident in it. You're going to see more opportunity in it. And that happens with everything in the culinary world, I think.
Yeah. Before, you were mentioning that it's just really nice to see your team members get more comfortable with their workstations, and through your systems that you're helping them out and giving them that mentorship that they need. I was actually going to run a little segue because before I met you, I was a cook as well. So I did open concept kitchen down in Shaughnessy. It's called the Phoenix Grill.
Yeah.
I was like 16 to about 18. I worked on the line, and it was funny. The level of confidence that when I first started with was horrendous. Like they put me on Friday night saute station, and I remember crashing at 5:30. Like I had been there for maybe 30 minutes. I crashed so bad they kicked me off the line.
Yeah.
And I actually had to take like classes with the chef. I call them classes. He literally taught me how to like toss a pan. So we put dry penne noodles into a pan and just practice tossing it back and forth. And then I remember like that's still a party trick to this day.
Yeah.
You always get you flip a pancake nice and high and you catch it. But I will never forget how confident I was when I left. Like I did about $20,000 on a Friday night on the grill station every single Friday night at this place. And the confidence was sky high, borderline egotistical. Like, I felt like a god. Yeah. You read Anthony Bourdain's books and you understand why people have a little bit of a complex because they just think they're awesome because of cool moments like that. I don't know where I'm going with that, but we're going to segue into better questions. So what's a belief you used to hold about success that you've completely let go of?
That's very deep.
Yeah.
I listened to something today, and I found it really fascinating. But it was like when you talk about success, it's like, do you value success the same when you, as far as like a business or like professional life goes? Do you value it as successful if you start pulling out measurables? So if it's like, hey, financially, like if you were making way less and doing the same thing, would you still find it that you were successful in what you did? Or if you didn't have as much meaning in what it was, would you still find yourself as successful as you did if it was just like something that like everyone loved but you hated? Would you still be like, that was success? And for me, I think about that in the career sense a lot of just like, what is success?
Yeah.
And that shift point, I think before it was like, success with me was like getting all these goals and accomplishing things and being like, this is what I've done, this is what I've done, this is what I've done. But I think you get to a point that you're like, you still want to accomplish more, but you're like, what I've done's enough. Like I've pushed myself, I've accomplished all these things that like 20 years ago when I started cooking, I couldn't even imagine that this is the position I'd be in. And so I think taking back and looking more at that perspective is where you find like the light. And for me, I think that's where the success has kind of definitely shifted. It's like, hey, like you don't have to keep like reinventing yourself every little bit here and be like, this is what's going on. It's like hone in on what's working really well and give yourself space and time and value and hold on to that and celebrate those wins. And I think early on in my career and even up to like the last few years, like it was like hard to celebrate. Like you're just like, nope, check it off the list. I've done it. This is what I wanted to accomplish forever. Great. And you do that with so many things in your life as far as like all the stuff you're told you need to do, like buying a place or a vehicle or this and this. Like, yeah, I've checked all these institutions off and you're like, well, that didn't fix everything. It's like, so I think for me now, it's like, hey, like looking after myself physically, mentally, being excited, surrounding myself with great people. And like that's success, is like having that circle, like who's going to sit next to you when you're 75. And if you have a bunch of friends around you and loved ones that are engaged and like you have that community with, that's success now. And I think that's the shift of being like very career driven. This is what has to happen. Want to still push it, want to still grow, want to still do more. But I think like overarchingly, it's like, how do I look after myself and the people around me is the most important.
Hell yeah. I love that. You said you heard that quote today or something. What was that on?
Just a random like Instagram reel that I was like, all right.
Sometimes they get you.
Sometimes they get you, but I was like, it was pretty smart. And they just, started evaluating different pieces of success. But
okay.
I'll send it your way when I find it.
Cool. So you've won TV competitions, you won some local awards, launched multiple concepts, led teams. What moment are you most proud of?
Honestly, I think overall, like all those at the time, or a lot of them at the time, I didn't really celebrate. And so like just going back to the last question, I was like, oh, another thing off the list, like did it, this is what happened. It's exciting, it's fun, but there's like a long lead way of like planning it, the stress point, what you do. So it's like almost a relief when you do it. You're like the initial open or the initial getting it done, you're like, I did it. And you're like, okay, what's next? And you're like just focusing on that. So I think for me, it's like more the meaningfulness of like how I'm intentional with my work on a daily basis. It's like spending time with people in the restaurants and in the businesses that want to grow and want to learn. And I'm like, that's the like most exciting part for me right now, and seeing people advance more than anything else. It's like, I'm glad businesses are doing well, foolish to complain on any of those pieces, but really now for me, it's like, how do you look after those people around you, and how do you build people up so that they're there and they're passionate about it and they're feeling the growth and they're feeling the excitement around it, but they're in a more balanced setting than I didn't allow myself really to have for a lot of my career.
Wild. Chris Williamson on Modern Wisdom, he's one of my favorite podcasts. I quote him way too much because I love what he's bringing to the table, but he talks about nobody celebrates kind of those quiet accomplishments, those things that happen behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's so many of those tasks that nobody knows. Like, this one day was particularly hard for you to get out of bed at 5 a.m, but that was a quiet accomplishment. And it is sad to hear like you achieved these milestones and you didn't give yourself the chance to celebrate them.
Yeah.
I hope the next wave of accomplishments, which you are going to have, you take those moments and you step back. It's fine to keep pursuing more.
Yeah.
But I hope you celebrate it with those 70 close friends, right?
100%.
When you're 7, or the friends that you have when you're 70. So,
I think that's the big one. It's just like, hey, once you realize that, I think you live a lot more mindfully of that win of like anything, like getting out of bed when you had a shitty week and you go up and you show up and you are there. It's like, that's the grit and the intention and like how you see that long-term success in a lot of people. And I think like for myself, it's just that continued momentum of like, but then like pause, celebrate, be stoked on what happened, learn from the opportunities, don't beat yourself up on it. Everyone makes mistakes, everyone sees failure, and as long as you get up out of bed the next day and go ahead and move forward, that's the win.
Yeah. I love that. So what is it about food that brings people together like almost nothing else in your view?
Honestly, I think you go back to that, it's just that nurture. It's like, that's what it is. It's something that everyone in the world can think of a time they had a meal and it meant something.
Yeah.
Regardless of economic backgrounds, regardless of nationality, anything like that, upbringing, there's always something that's like, this was comfort to me. And I think that's the cool thing with food, because comfort food can be anything, or what like you gravitate for. It could be someone could be a hot dog in a park. It could be their mom making apple pie. It could be the store-bought lasagna that you love from the corner grocery store by your house, and everything in between. And I think that's the fun and interesting thing with food, and the comfort level of it, and like that nostalgic gravitation to bring you back to somewhere. And I always find it cool when you eat something and it unintentionally reminds you of something else. Like if you eat like a food that you've never had before and you're like, oh, that like brings me back to this.
Yeah.
I find that's like the most interesting one. Like I remember I made like a red sauce, like chicken parm, like super simple for some friends. And they're like, this reminds me of my mom's biryani. And I was like, that's so weird, but so interesting, because it's like nothing really the same, but a lot of things that are the same.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, like there's just like something about it that like brings me back to that. And I'm like, that's cool. Like that's the interesting with food, of you're just like, it can be a reminder. It can be a clip of time that you had years ago, or it could be something that reminds you of what you ate yesterday. So I'm like, that's the cool thing with food. It's always evolving, and it's always someone's perception.
Love that. It's a little bit of a time machine.
Yeah.
And it definitely is. I've had dishes that bring me back to vacations. I've had dishes that just remind me of like my childhood. It sounds completely basic, but here's like a funny little comfort food. So my parents worked varying shifts when we were younger. My dad would be traveling for work or something, and my mom would have had a busy day at work. And this was one of my favorite dishes, but it's probably like the most basic thing I've ever had. It was literally pasta, butter, and pepper.
Yeah.
And to this day, every now and again, when I just have pasta, butter, and pepper, I'm just like, yeah, my childhood with my mom taking care of us when my dad's traveling for work.
That's
it's
amazing.
definitely a time machine.
Yeah.
In your eyes, what's Calgary missing to become a true culinary destination, and what's already working here?
I honestly don't think it's missing anything at all.
Perfect.
I think there is layers to our community that have gotten really positive. I think there's a lot of hidden gems. I think for us, Calgary as a whole, and I think it's an acknowledgement point as well, but it's like it's starting to get more and more creative from the food standpoint. But at the end of the day, it's going back to what I said at the very beginning of this, of like playing the hits and what people want, what your community wants. So I appreciate that with Calgary. There's lots of interesting things that are coming to market, and it's growing and evolving, and our population grows and evolves. And it just takes more and more young chefs and people within the community that want to push the envelope and want to do more interesting things, and people coming from different cities, different backgrounds, different learnings. So I think it's cool to see those. It's great to see all these pop-ups happening with young chefs and doing cool things.
When you think about the people who shaped your confidence in the kitchen, who comes to mind and why?
Honestly, I had a few along the way. This, like, whether it was a lapse in time or a quick thing. Mine was pretty interesting. I never really like worked for a chef that was like I was in the trenches with every day. It was more like they were in like high level leadership roles or anything like that, and I would see them once every week, this sort of thing. But I had a few in my career that definitely like kickstarted my like confidence, and I think that's the biggest one for me. When I worked for Marietta's group when I was I think 24 when I started with them, my first like corporate chef job of like I was their like corporate field chef, and I looked after like Marietta's here. There's one in Canmore, one in Edmonton at the time, and they had the Trib Steakhouse where like Wednesday Room is right now on Stephen Ave, and they also had Parker House and the Swine and Sow on like 6th Avenue. They had the Cellar Wine Store, and I came on board and I was like wide-eyed, like this is a crazy opportunity. Was not necessarily felt like I had the tools to do that job really well at the beginning, and it was like a full learning of just like being confident in your actions and the tools that you already have to bring into the table. And obviously when someone trusts you to like do well in that, so the guy at the time was the old corporate chef Chris Grafton. He moved into like the like VP role and like director role of the company, and so worked really closely with one another. And he was just like, you know how like dollars and cents work, you've done that in like your other stuff here, the food thing you're comfortable with. But he's like, it's just getting at confidence. And so confidence with dealing with people that are older than me and like not mentoring them, but working alongside them and growing into that comfort level, like learn from everyone around you. And that was the shift in my career of like being confident, but also taking it on the chin when you like fuck something up or got it wrong or didn't like think something through all the way. And being at a young age there, I was there from like 24 to 27. And in that time, there was so much growth professionally, and that was invaluable. And a lot on Chris's part of just being like, be confident in it, helping me up when I got my teeth kicked in a little bit and being like, this is how you move forward and do it again. But had a lot of success with that company, and it was cool to see the growth over those 3 years and the shift of the organization and all the changes along the way. So that one was definitely a big one for me from a mentorship standpoint.
Nice. Yeah, Marietta's. Yeah, that was one that I knew about when I was going to SAIT. So I worked with some of the, I guess they were the financial backing to them. They used to have an office out of, at the time it's called Art Central. Do you remember Art Central? Yeah. And now it's the TELUS building. But we'll tell you some stories about that afterwards. If a young chef stopped you in the street and asked, how do I make it in an industry without losing myself? What would you say?
Honestly, I think you got to invest in it. So I think in this career, it is still something that can keep you up at night and can be a challenge. But if you go in it with intention and you focus on letting yourself have the ambition to fail, have the ambition to take on new things, have the ambition to really just dip your toe in and let it fully immerse you as quick as possible, that's where you're going to see the change. And I think from like a standpoint of getting there without letting it consume you fully, you can do it. You can be a cook and go that way and do very well and have a manageable thing. And it's like as your ambition level grows, it's like, oh, I want to be a sous chef now. I want to be a chef. I want to be a culinary director. I want to own my own business. I want to be an entrepreneur, all those sort of things that you go on when you start in this career. It's like really the world's endless. So it's whatever you're willing to put into it, you're going to get back out. But be mindful and look after yourself along the way, I think is the biggest one. It's take the time to learn your craft, take the time to appreciate those around you that you work with on a regular basis, and then learn as much as you can from everyone, because the learning opportunities are endless. You can learn something from the porter washing dishes, you can learn something from the sous chef next to you, you can learn something from the bartender cutting lemons. You just like never know where you're going to find some way of doing something different that's going to make your things more effective and more efficient. So I think that it's like a constant thing of learning. It's one of those careers that like you're never going to know everything. If you have every single accolade, everything like that, you still don't know everything. So I think that's the cool part with the culinary side of things. So just go in it with ruthless ambition and let it consume you, but look after yourself along the way.
Cool. I had a question that I think a little bit of what you were saying right there might fall into it, but I'm going to say it anyways. If you were to talk to your younger self, what would you tell yourself?
I think if I went back and I looked at my younger self in this career, I would be like, let yourself fail. Like, it's not a negative. Like, you're going to learn from it. Even those quiet failures that you didn't really talk about or swept under the rug when you're younger in your career, those are things that if you would have talked about it, you probably would have learned more in the moment, and it would have been a road less traveled to get to where you wanted to get to, I think, with a lot of it. So for me, it's like, be forgiving and accept the mistakes along the way. And those are all things that you're going to learn from and grow from eventually. And so it's like, hey, if you fail or something goes wrong or anything like that, it's like, there's always the learning in it, and don't let your ego get in the way of learning it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that concludes this episode. Mike, where can people find you?
You can find me at Pat and Betty's, Pijot's Burger Club in Calgary, Vancouver, and Toronto, and then with Mano in Calgary.
Amazing. So for those who made it all the way to the end, once again, I really appreciate you. You guys are what makes this podcast possible. So remember to share this, help us get it out there. We're also going to be selling some swag here soon, so stay tuned. But that's it for this episode. Let's get after it. That's it, buddy.
Sick.
I appreciate that.
That's it.